on.
Привет, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sundays with Lenin. The reason why we started this show is because you hear a lot of advice about, oh, well, you need to get more involved or start small, just like really stupid things. Like everything Hillary Clinton says is like the stupid advice that, like, about like Bernie, like all of it is stupid. And all of it has been done before, like 100 years ago. Like, and so the pundits and the hacks have not changed in about 100 years or 110 years. And so I kind of wanted the left to learn from winners. And the winner is Lenin. Oh, it says I'm muted.
No, you shouldn't be muted. I hear you. I'm hearing you. Yeah, I hear
I
you.
hear myself too. It's this okay. David Umtov. Retract. Okay. I will answer. Okay. Excellent. Sorry. And so it's like basically what you guys need to assume is that Lenin's always right, because I haven't yet found a time when he's wrong. And it's like you'll realize that even the most progressive people, like TYT. Oh God. Okay, not TYT. I don't know what they are. Name somebody else who's progressive. If they don't have, if they don't like, if they're, it's basically they're not telling you. Well, they don't know what is to be done, for lack of a better word. So this episode is extremely important because we will be doing where to begin, and listen very carefully and take very careful notes. And Lenin says that we need to create an all Russia newspaper if we want change. Or I guess in America, in the modern sense, some sort of like news media of like where you are like independent and all sorts of things. And we really need to do that with like current events, and we need to tie it to the worker struggles, like all this. Where to begin is just a rough outline, and then he further expounds that. So just go invite everyone you know, tag them right now, share this on the DMs and everything. We'll wait. Okay, so but we kind of do. Somebody did mention, Dani Abdul mentioned. Did you see Anna as in Anna Kasparian cited Bellingcat on Twitter as an evidence of her arguments? Yes. I was like looking through some of the old cringe from QIT, and it's like they are so popular because they make it a point never to question establishment orthodoxy on mostly anything, especially foreign policy. And I don't know what their intentions are. I don't care. But it's like there needs to be some basic, just the most basic accountability, the most basic fact checking. So let's look at this tweet from yesterday that's super embarrassing by Anna Kasparian.
Hold on. Okay, it's there.
Okay. Well, so you see what did she say? Let me read this tweet out in case
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Do you seriously think that's better? Does Aaron also think Kim Jong-un was popular, has popular support, and that his people think he's a hero because they have his photo on their walls?
Okay. First of all, they don't have Kim Jong-un's photo on the walls. Many of them have Kim Il-sung's photo on the walls. And if you understand their history, you'll totally understand why. But this is so dumb because, like, she could, like, go to the Wikipedia page or even the CIA fact book and check who's the head of state of North Korea. And according to the Constitution, the head of state of North Korea is the chairman of the Supreme People's Assembly. Do you want to put up my tweet?
Yep, there it goes.
And that's Cho Rong-hae. So Kim Jong-un's role is the general secretary of the Workers' Party in Korea. So that's kind of like similar to being the head of the DNC. Of course, you'll get baby brains or like galaxy brains be like, how do we know that he's not secretly in control? We don't, but you can't like assume random things. You have to show evidence that like they don't. So you can't. Yeah, I mean, I can show you the Constitution, but if you think that Kim Jong-un is secretly controlling everyone in North Korea, show evidence, show how it's done. Okay, Ghani Abdul said Kim has actually around 80, 85 approval rating, I believe. And I said, and the funny thing is that is in South Korea that his approval rating is that high. So, so yeah. And so it's really funny. And then, yeah, so yes, they can like, so I assume that what you need to assume is nothing until somebody proves a fact with some sort of evidence. So I'm gonna say I don't know about those intricacies if true. I mean, it is possible, but I don't know. What I do know is that according to the Constitution of North Korea, Chang Ro-hae is the head of state. And it seems like the Western press has a bizarre obsession with Kim Jong-un for some random reason. And it looks like what Kim Jong-un mostly does is press contact and liaison with other countries. So like he sends messages, like today he sent a message to Putin about like, I don't know, some sort of like, oh, we, the people of Russia and North Korea, like have a friendship. And so he seems like more of like a press liaison, some sort of liaison. So that's the impression I get. But again, I don't know. Well, no, I do know, but I don't have patience to take you guys through like 70 years of history in order to convince you what it is, because it's like really ridiculous. So I'm just going to say I don't know. And one day you guys can go through the 70 years of history and also look at how Western press gets their information. Western press mostly gets their information from this right-wing Korean website, the occupied portion, called Chosun Ilbo. And usually Chosun Ilbo, you can always tell when Chosun Ilbo is like totally making it up, is when they have anonymous or unanimous, I don't know, anonymous officials, like saying random crap. Like I remember a few years ago, they had something about, oh, this general was executed. Well, a few months later, he was having dinner with Putin. So my guess is he's not executed. And it's like just like that. Like they have all sorts of speculation. And in the US, it's encouraged. And they bank on the fact that most Americans don't read very carefully. And you'll realize that you can tell they'll say something like it is assumed that he's dead, so that means they have not seen that he's dead. And what I do is, of course, I change my standard based on how often they lie. So New York Times once got a parody site confused with a North Korean press release, so I'm going to just assume that they don't know what they're talking about. So I just don't. I will have to verify everything. Okay, Ghani Abdul also said that Western media said Kim Jong-un died 4 times in a row. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm sure they have. Yeah, and so just I just know better than to trust anything. So like allegedly somebody in North Korea may have said something about K-pop, but I haven't seen a video and I haven't even read the New York Times article, but I'll try to read it by the end of the show. And so the first piece is also really important. You guys are gonna love this. We have Desiree Berg. She's from Status Corps, which is a really progressive news organization, and unlike TYT, they actually do real news. And she does a lot of reporting from LA about the situation there. She does work with police brutality. And the first thing is that we will learn why lesser evilism does not work. And after this piece, I'm going to come back because this is so important that I want to make sure it is drilled into your head about why lesser evil will not work. So hope you enjoy this show, and then we'll be back later with questions and comments and trolling. And we can also do like something like, what would Lenin say? So if you guys have any tweets that you want me to address or any clips or anything, just put it here. Hello, everyone. Today we have Tina Desiree Berg. She is out of LA and she has a wonderful podcast, and she's also a correspondent in Status Quo. Coop.
Yep.
So we're very excited to have Tina. She does a lot of coverage with, has great videos about police brutality, and she also has coverage of all the shenanigans the California Democratic Party is into. So how did you get involved, Tina?
That's a full-time job covering California Democratic Party shenanigans, actually. I've actually been involved in journalism most of my life. I worked at a network for a couple of years in the 90s. So this is now dating myself. But I also went and got my master's degree in philosophy along the way as well, because I had a deep interest in theoretical things. So this is like a great show. I'm kind of excited to do with you because I think it sort of puts those two things together on the same planet. So this should be fun. Plus, I have not read a lot of Lenin. So I think I'm going to be surprised by some things I learned today with you.
Yeah, everyone is. So you know what's really funny? So you told me your degree is in race science, right?
Well, okay. So yes, I did my master's on thesis on the history of scientific racism. So not racism per se, but the history of how science has been racist and the things that it's put forth, how it's been used to justify racist beliefs. Like a modern example of this would be the bell curve, where you saw, a couple of scientists at Harvard put out a book that was funded by American Enterprise Institute. It's Charles Murray. But it's basically a book that said that people are hardwired for IQ, and that IQ is related to phenotypical traits identified with race, which is patently absurd. Nothing in biology is hardwired for anything. The environment always matters. That's just a basic tenet of biology. But they were using it. The most nefarious part of this is they were using this book to justify definancing things like Head Start. And they were making this very cruel argument that the reason we should defund Head Start and not waste our money on it is because these folks are hardwired for stupidity, and no amount of money or education is going to change that. So really a dark spot in our history. But there's many examples of this. Not the first, not the last.
That's actually why I love reading Lenin, because he actually calls out this back in his day, there was a lot of stupid race science. He calls them all out.
There was.
And the only what you notice is if you are reading any older literature, if it's not Marxist, it's just unreadable because they're like racist pieces of crap.
Even look, here's the thing, even guys like Kant and Hume defended a certain level of what I would call biodeterminism. So if we're going back to 18th century, that's really where this was birthed, right? So you had human taxonomy first come into discussion at that time. Also, it's interesting to note that Darwin was the guy saying that there's not a hierarchy here. He would talk about what he would call the spread of excellence, meaning that all of these differences occur on a variant scale, and that you're adapted to the environment you're in, and there's just no hierarchy here. A fish has got to swim, so it's got fins and not hands. We would die in that environment. Does that mean that we're better than the fish per se, or vice versa? No, it's just the spread of excellence, right? So, and he felt the same way about the human species. He didn't think there were different species the way some others would argue that there was, or that there was any sort of hierarchy to it. But I think it's important to note that the British government wanted to use race science to justify colonialism, to justify slavery, right? If we can other these folks to a place where they're inferior to us, we can sort of relieve the tension that we have between these beliefs and our very Christian, very religious, moral background that we're trying to, put together. There's obviously a tension, right? Enslaving another human being should not be considered a moral thing. So the way to get around that is to just decide that there's a hierarchy, they're inferior to us, and we can justify everything by those means. So very dark stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of funny because most liberals actually deep down believe in this kind of race science because I mean they don't have a dialectical way of looking at race like from a historical materialistic way, and you'll see them just give them 30 seconds and they'll be like, oh, Russians are genetically, oh my god, okay, we're gonna have to play have you seen the James Clapper video about how Russians are genetically programmed to be evil?
Wait, what? He said they're genetically programmed to be evil? That's outrageous. No, I have not seen that. But I would like to tell you that I'm not shocked by this. You know, what's interesting to me is that a lot of times, and it's both parties and all folks that do this. This is not something, like, people want to believe that the Democrats are less racist than the Republicans are, but that's not the case. It's just, it takes a different turn. I think liberals tend more to this idea that all communities... Oh, okay, go ahead and play it.
The historical practices of the Russians, who are typically almost genetically driven to co-opt, penetrate, gain favor, whatever, which is a typical Russian technique. So we were concerned.
What year was this?
At 2018 or 2019.
Okay, you know, I was thinking you were going to say it was older than that. That's insane. Come on, man. 2018, you're still trying to make a biodeterminist argument for anything? That's ridiculous. Wow. Cold War rhetoric always...
Well, I mean, okay, with Cold War rhetoric, it literally came from the Nazis.
Propaganda.
Hold on. It literally came, I'm not joking, even exaggerating. Okay, so what happened was that there was this guy who was in charge of the Eastern campaign, which is like the most horrific campaign, Reinhard Gehlen. He was put as the head of the CIA, and he was also, no, sorry, not the head of the CIA. He was the CIA. He was flown over to by Dulles before the CIA was created. He was the head of the West German intelligence agency. And then he started Radio Free Europe. And that's where you get all your anti-communist propaganda. So it's like literally like Nazi stuff. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, it is literally like, so when you hear, like, I remember like a few months ago, they got, oh yeah, the FBI released this thing where they were like having the protocols of the elders of Zion, and then with that release, you got.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. They tweeted it or something, didn't they?
Yeah, but then when you read the letters with.
How did they not know that was Nazi rhetoric?
No, it gets worse. All these like American neighbors were people were turning in their Jewish neighbors like being communist after reading that, and it's like, you'd be surprised. Like there were over 100 letters saying that, oh, my neighbors. And so what people don't realize is everything you know about the Cold War is literally from the Nazis.
You know, it's interesting to me. What the most fascinating aspect of Cold War propaganda rotates on the fact that they knew that this was the way that they could defeat workers' rights globally, right? If we turn this an argument against freedom versus communism, and communism represents some sort of authoritarian regime, we can smack down all the workers' rights things across the globe and perpetually say we are defending freedom, right? So they give you this rhetoric, we're defending freedom, but really it's not about that at all. It's about defeating any leftist movement that's pro-workers' rights and detrimental to American empire or business interests. So they were very effective in this, right? HUAC. I mean, you can go back through the entire spectrum of McCarthyism, and it's really remarkable to me.
Well, they were effective in America, but in the
that's what I mean.
If you notice, they had to fight, they had to napalm everything and then bomb everything.
Oh, 100%.
Kill everything that moves. So,
but that's how they justified that, right? They justified going into all of these countries. Like, people forget Vietnam War didn't start as a war against communism per se. It started with the Vietnamese wanting their freedom from colonial France, right? This was a country that was like, we're tired of being part of a colony of your empire. We want our independence, right? That's how that started. But of course, the Americans had to sell the population here in the United States on something else. We're fighting communism. We're fighting for freedom. the Vietnamese people should have their own democracy. But it really wasn't about that, was it? It was about the fact that this was very threatening to American business interests.
Yeah, well, the thing about it is that even Lenin talks a lot about this. So actually, oh my God, we should totally read imperialism, but that's a long story. But the thing is that the higher, so the closer you are to the imperial, so what Marx tells you is that your, like, the amount of wealth you get to share has nothing to do with how much work you have, but as close to like how close you are to those in power, right? So inside the U.S., the compromise was for the labor aristocracy to say, hey, we're going to let you share some of the wealth we plunder, but you're going to have to be like soldiers and go kill a few Vietnamese people here and there once in a while, kill entire villages or whatever. And actually, the AFL-CIO was like, oh, deal, literally, like in 1948. So what happens is that
I don't know anything about that. Wait, can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So in 1948, the AFL-CIO expelled communists from their union. And on top of that, they collaborated with the imperialists in order to in the third world, a lot of them call it AFL-CIA. For example, in Chile, AFL-CIO was not on the side of Allende. They were actually like bribing they were like doing coups with
really?
Yeah.
That's
so
remarkable.
what they did was that they would bribe truckers to to have like fake strikes, just like shut down everything and just kind of jam up, kind of like what the Venezuelan opposition does.
Okay.
You see what I mean? Like they light foodstuffs on fire. You see that? Well, they just kind of do sabotage. Like that's basically what the AFL-CIO did there, and they didn't.
What did they think they had to gain from that, though? Did they think that was more of a benefit to American workers versus workers abroad, or what was? Yeah. What was the? Oh, interesting.
It was basically American workers. This deal kind of stayed as long as the Soviet Union stayed. American workers get to be, I mean, back then you could actually be relatively comfortable, have an 8-hour job.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was the deal. We're going to let you have an American comfortable lifestyle with 2 garage cars or 2 kids. Wait, what is it? 1 car, 2 kids, or 2 kids, 1 car, whatever it is. And then, so basically the labor aristocracy, like the head of the AFL-CIA or whatever, said, sure. And that did not.
Well, hang on a second. That's really interesting to me because prior to that, they had been the victims of the opposite here in this country. I mean, people were literally murdered for the workers' rights that we had achieved by then. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to me that would be the case. I didn't know that.
Yep. I mean, 2 years after the Nazis, which is like totally capitalist, like the fact that American...
Yeah, the Nazis were capitalist.
Back then, socialism was completely discredited. But 2 years later, in 1948, how the bleep did American workers allow this? Because they it was basically a deal by the management of the unions with the bosses where it's like, okay, we need mercenaries to kind of mow these people down. Americans are going to be mercenaries, but we're going to keep you guys relatively comfortable. And then, like I said, it lasted as long as the Soviet Union did. And then it just went boom. And management didn't keep their part of the bargain. But AFL-CIO did so many sabotage activities, so many coups. Jakarta, we have an entire episode.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
sad to hear that, man.
AFL-CIA.
I get what you did there.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into that a little more. I did not know that.
I'm just going to link the 2 episodes with Dan Kovalik on it. Like we will go through lots of detail. And Kim Scripes also wrote a book called AFL-CIA or something like that.
That's great. That's such a great title.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. That's why I don't really trust most American unions. So
I think you have to be careful about leadership. Often you'll see leadership's wants diverge from what the rest of the union membership wants. I know in my union, that's been the case more than once. I have long had beefs with people we have in power because they don't always do the right thing, right? Some of them are swayed by the employers they should be,
Wait,
fighting against.
Are you Screen Actors Guild?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. You guys had Ronald Reagan as your head.
I know. Say no, right? I know. I don't know what that says about.
Well, there's nothing more fed. Like, actually, no. What?
He was only there for an hour, a year, an hour. I wish he was only there for a year, but he did a lot of damage.
Everyone, right?
Like, he did a lot of damage. Yes, yeah. He fully supported turning communists in that were members of SAG. He absolutely did that. He also gave a giant handout to the producers that had a lasting effect on the guild. Ronald Reagan was a bad guy. He was a monster. I don't know how he even won that election. I'm not that old. I wasn't there. So let me just say that. But we've had, I don't think Melissa Gilbert was a good guild president. I think the last really solid one we had was Ed Asner.
He
was actually, Ed's great. Ed was president when I got Taft-Hartley into the union. So I have big love for Ed Asner. I think Martin Sheen's a really good guy. He is always out there on the picket lines, even for non-SAG stuff. He's just a union guy, right? So there's, as with everything, there's a left wing and a not so left wing, even though we've had Republicans on our board. Explain to me how we have Republicans in leadership in a union. The GOP wants to, have work for right laws across the board and kill all the unions. Yet here we are. You'd be surprised how many Teamsters self-identify as Republicans. So sometimes things are just complex in these areas because you're playing on personal beliefs, emotions, and people are capable of having all kinds of cognitive dissonance in those areas.
They are, but the problem is that when everyone has the same one, like in America, what happens is that because you guys are so alienated from labor, like things don't start, like there isn't like a connection that you can draw. And so Americans, like I'm up to all this morning, I've been arguing with like
it's uber capitalism. Yeah.
Hold on. Wait, let me finish. Okay. All this morning, I've been arguing with like this like dumb anarchist who just sometimes can't understand that if you don't have tractors, you can't produce enough food because you need like to rapid like you need that speed to just go boom, 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 boom and plow all the land because the amount of food you grow is directly related to how much you plow. But basically what they don't have any clue of anything, like they don't understand like the process it takes to go from mining cobalt to your iPhone. Like they don't understand all that. They just kind of have. So what happens is that Americans. Okay, there's actually a Marx. We're gonna. Okay, I know exactly what piece we're gonna do, but this is kind of why Americans are like seen as being so stupid. Is what they lack is dialectical materialism because you guys can because you're so alienated from actual problems and stuff like that. Like you can believe whatever stupid crap that they feed you because you don't have to develop that skill of dialectical materialism where you have no real problems to solve. So that's like why Americans are extra stupid. Sorry. Oops.
So my father was, he comes from a farming family in the south of Sweden. So I have to laugh at that. He's, is he what?
Does he also complain of the lack of
Really? I mean, my dad's older now. He's almost 80. He's seen a lot in his life, as did my grandfather. I think, there's a certain level of problems that people in the United States don't experience because it is generally considered a wealthy country, it's a developed country, right? Well, so even the poorest people in this country might not understand some of the other problems from countries that have more rural backgrounds, developing nations. They probably don't understand that. It's hard.
They don't understand anything. Like I said, like they literally do not understand anything because what I notice is that, it's not even that. It's just like there's no curiosity because they've never had this have to figure things out on their own because somebody's like, there is a class of people who have been so, I hate using that word, but so isolated from all of
insular.
Yes, that's the word. That they don't actually
there is a certain level of insularity there, yeah.
And that makes Americans like extra stupid and extra reactionary and extra gullible. And also we have to remember that our population is not really a natural population. It's actually been like socially engineered to be the most obedient. Like people would sell their prisoners or like whatever to America as a way to just get rid of problems. And so it's like the most dumbest, stupidest and in population in the world.
I don't know. I think there's stupid people everywhere, but I hear what you're saying. There's definitely an insularity here.
Okay. Sorry. The institutions are not stupid in other countries. Okay. For example, like in India, like even when you have Modi in power, the institution of like understanding, hey, maybe we should not trust everything we see in TV about like whatever random country is there. That there's an institutional knowledge of that there. Here, there is no institutional knowledge. And so people have forgotten little things like 1930s and 1940s or whatever, when there was a bigger consciousness.
Oh, it's interesting. Well, it's interesting. There was a bigger consciousness then, even though there was a hell of a lot more racism, et cetera. If we could meld those two things together, we'd be a lot better off.
The racism is still there. Like the racism was from a different segment of the population.
Yeah.
So like if you looked at working class newspapers, there wasn't any racism. They were like talking about solidarity and stuff. Right. But so that's exactly. So what they did is
I hear what you're saying. There was definitely more solidarity.
They made the white people like more racist by just like pushing them up to middle class.
So you're saying they use classism?
No, they pushed them to middle class, and then that way, okay, American propaganda is always racist propaganda. So if you're in middle class, if you're poor, you can actively reject it because like your life is like hard and you're not going to believe all the crap. But if you're in the middle class suburbs, isolated from everything, you're not going to have the dialectical outlook. So they pushed a lot of the white workers up to the middle class to make them more racist.
You've got this upper middle class that is so comfortable where they are that they're willing to continue to uphold a plutonymy that does not serve their interests. And by the plutonymy,
it serves their interests, but
it really does. They're never going to be part of that. And the wealthy elites, whether they're politicians serving the wealthy elites or they're both a politician and a wealthy elite, we have a lot of that. They are definitely legislating to their benefit and not to the benefit of the vast majority of Americans, right? And as that cycle has tightened over the last 40 years, they've continued to gain more money and power. And because they've been able to gain more money and power, they've legislated further to their benefit. And then, of course, that causes them to gain more money and power. So it's sort of like a cycle of money and power consolidating with legislation that serves their needs, right? So I think we are at a profoundly extreme level of that at this point. And obviously it's not tenable. We have a lot of civil unrest because of it. And a lot of the homelessness that we see, this is by design, right? I mean, if you live in Los Angeles and you're making $15 an hour, you cannot afford to rent a 1-bedroom apartment and buy food. It's not possible. Like at Echo Park, a lot of the folks that lived there were fully employed or they were students attending school full time. And they were choosing to camp out there or sleep in their cars because they simply couldn't afford to pay rent. Or if they could, they'd have money for nothing else, right? And what kind of a life is that? It's a life of misery. It's a life of despair. And I think that matters too, right? Why shouldn't people be allowed to pursue happiness? Which I think is also by design in our uber capitalist system. So I kind of went off on a tangent there.
Lenin was robbed a bank. That was really cool. So he was not sponsored by anyone. It's called a Tbilisi, which is modern day Georgia. They robbed a bank, and that's how they funded.
Wait, Lenin actually robbed a bank? I didn't know that either.
No, Stalin robbed the bank for him, but Lenin organized the bank robbery in order to fund the Bolshevik Revolution in 1906.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
is that how Trotsky ended up on a train?
No, that's a different story. So what Lenin...
Sorry.
Hold on. So this was 1905. Okay, back then Trotsky was still a Menshevik. And so this was in 1905 or 1906. It's called the Great Tiflis Bank Heist. And what they did was they figured out... actually, let me just... okay, so what happened in 1907? Okay, so... basically what happened is that the Tsar would like store all this crap every year. And then so one day what they did is they just like blew a hole in the carriage, and Stalin basically bribed two people who was in the who were working for the Tsar to like just blow that hole, and then that created enough of a distraction that they went in and just got like bags of the money, and that's how they funded their revolution, is by robbing a bank. And so that's why whenever AOC like asks for money, I'm like, go rob a bank if you really want to rob it. Yeah, Lenin's wife
That's
also.
Good. Wait, have you actually tweeted that at her? That's kind of funny.
No, I won't. I don't even care. But it's like, yeah, she's like been giving money to like all the stupid what is it? Like all the stupid.
Yeah, she gave money to a lot of conservative Democrats, and I'm not understanding why she did that. That was strange. I thought that was a strange move.
Well, mostly because she's. I don't even care. But it's because she doesn't want to be. It's like she. What is the right word? She does not want to be. She thinks that if she plays ball, they'll like give her a concession, but they won't because it's not about her; it's about power, and they like they basically will always be beholden to the right
Their donor class, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it's like but AOC does not realize that, and
yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of that comes from wanting concessions and thinking at some point that if I'm going to, no, they won't. We know that. But unfortunately, we've seen a lot of progressive politicians fall into that trap, right? It's like that whole, like, we're going to dangle the carrot in front of you. If you do what we ask you to do now, eventually you'll have a place of power inside the party.
Yeah.
And by the time they actually get a position of power, either they're completely corrupted to the system, which we've seen happen, unfortunately, or they're just, they fall by the wayside, are not going to be able to be effective in any position of power at that point because they're so placated by the party. So it's by design. But I think you're right. It's a certain level of naivete that believes that that's the case. Honestly, I would have liked to see at the last bill where they had this opportunity to really put their foot down, because we were going to be able to get around the filibuster, right? Like that was not in play. And yet, instead of doing that, they caved right in. And I don't understand why they didn't take advantage of that opportunity. They could have fought to have the $15 minimum wage and the reconciliation bill. They could have fought to keep, really, the public option, that's where we're at now. We should be fighting for Medicare for all. A lot of these.
No, Joe Biden abandoned the public option.
Yeah, he totally did. Yeah. I mean, he's abandoned everything. But I don't understand why progressives have just sort of gone along with this. They haven't really been putting out much of a fight.
Progressives,
and the guy that is Joe Manchin. Like, why does Joe Manchin have more control? Well, because he's willing to play chicken. He's willing to play hardball, right? He's willing to say, no, I'm not going to give you.
But he's not going to hold on. But there's a big difference in that Joe Manchin is going to get praised for his playing chicken. And if like the progressives were to play chicken, they're going to be punished for it. And they're not willing to.
But they should be willing to be punished. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, of course they should be, but they're not. And
they're not. No, that's the problem.
It is a different thing in that they'll be punished for it. And so she needs to be like okay with being blacklisted.
But you have to be willing. Yeah, you have to be willing to be able to take that punishment. You have to be willing to. You were elected to do that, and so I understand why a lot of constituents are angry about this. It makes perfect sense to me, and it's not just AOC. It's many of them. The entire squad sort of caved into these guys when they had that opportunity. You know, and then blaming the parliamentarian was just another level of ridiculousness. It was like, really, that's what we're using, the parliamentarian.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's like making up random. It's like, well, the thing is that it's kind of funny because some people have been like trolling me and they don't really like, well, okay. So somebody was like, do you believe in AOC's theory of change? And I was like, no, because her theory of change was discredited in 1933 when they clapped Deutschland, Deutschland, über. All the social democrats clapped and just went, Deutschland, Deutschland, über alles. And then, so then I'm like, yeah, that's why I don't believe in social democracy. I mean, there's nothing she's like, her basic thing is like, trust me, bro. And we're not going to trust you. Right?
Yeah, no, nobody should ever trust politicians, period, end of story. Listen, politicians are public servants. They are not rock stars. They should not be put on pedestals, and they should be held accountable for the decisions that they make, because really their employers are their constituents, not their donor class. At least theoretically, that should be the case. The reason one of the reasons I think our democracy is so broken is because that's fallen by the wayside. People from both sides of the aisle do this too. It's not exclusively a progressive thing. I mean, look at the cult that surrounds some of these like MAGA folks. Like, it's wild to me. Like, you have QAnon folks that are just held on this this pedestal in the same way AOC is by these folks. I think the cult of Trump is just still going on. Trump's not in office anymore. They've just, kind of switched their energies onto other things like the anti-masker movement's now this thing, and when that's over with, they'll find something else, right? So it's something about, I don't know if it's about the American psyche per se, or the flaws in the system sort of bring that out. But it's, we're at a place now where rock stars and politicians are sort of treated the same, and it's really bad. It's like, yeah, folks, don't do that. These folks need to be held accountable for their decisions. They're in positions of power, and what they can do to change things and for the good or the bad is really, it's part of the conversation. It should be part of the conversation, not the stuff that you guys want to focus on, Well, look at their records. I think most people don't even bother to look at voting records, or they ignore the things that they don't like, or, we can go through the list of things that happen, but it's not good.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of things that's not good. Honestly, okay. So the first thing is okay, so let's start systematically dissecting the whole AOC people. Everyone like her, and I'll just use her as a totem, and I just mean AOC and her ilk.
Yeah.
And AOC has the most, okay. The first thing is that she capitulates. For example, okay, so her entire thing is that she needs to be able to, okay, so even Lenin talks about this. There's two ways to get power. One is to appeal to the masses and get them energized. And the other way is to appeal to those in like the bourgeoisie or the royals or whatever. And the only way you can appeal to the masses is to excite them with big things. And okay, I know exactly which piece. Okay, you're going to love this, Tina. Okay, so with AOC, where was I?
Okay. You left off with the I don't know. You were saying something about Lenin saying that you had two ways of gaining power. One is
yeah. Okay, one is okay,
which I was actually getting into. I think that makes sense. Does he argue that it's one or the other, or are there possibilities of situations where both happens?
Well, it's a little complicated from that. But hold on one second. But I'm going to lose my AOC thought. I have ADHD, so just give me 1 second to finish this AOC thought that I'm trying to keep in my head. I'm like AOC. Okay. So the first way is to expand their framing. So the reason why you if you're a socialist, you can convert people who are on the right better is because you give them a new framework to think of. Instead of saying, we're just like that, but we're this. Like Bernie Sanders, for example, he's for Wall Street, I am. What did he say for Wall Street? What was it?
That he's against No.
He was really badass. He said for Wall Street. Hold on. I remember. I am dangerous for Wall Street.
Yeah.
Here it is. Okay. Sorry. So that just gave a different framing because being dangerous was not, it's he just kind of gave the idea that not all Americans have the same interests. And so it gets new people to think. So AOC could have been doing that. For example, when there was this Anderson Cooper interview, which was so cringy, she's like, okay. And I criticized her for this because come on. So what happened was that okay, the first thing they asked her is, do you want to be like Cuba or the USSR? And she's like, no. And she's like, and then she said something I want to be like England, Norway. And I'm like, okay, Norway was fascist. England is quasi-fascist.
Norway welcomed the Nazis in. A lot of people don't know that, Isha, though. That's
okay, but at least don't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but don't state fascist. Okay, I expect her to not state openly fascist. She might as well just be like, Nazi Germany was not valid. Anyways, what she should have done is talk about all the good things. Say, hey, Cuba cured illiteracy in 4 months. So did the Sandinistas. Right. But instead, she did not do that. She's like, I don't want to be like the Cuba what she did with Maduro. I just wanted to slap 100%. Her for that one. The Maduro, this is the choice between authoritarianism and freedom. And I'm no, you fucking bleeper. That's not it.
It's sort of like she doesn't get the nuanced idea that there are good and bad in all governments and all countries. To just use these are your examples of bad governments and these are your examples of good ones is a very, very bad thing.
But then she went on to cite fascist governments that are all bad.
Yeah.
But well, no, I mean,
like, even if you might have a beef about some things Cuba has done.
Well, she doesn't know enough about what Cuba has done.
You'd be
She doesn't have a
ridiculous
well,
to not recognize that Cuba has done a lot of great stuff too.
Well, I mean, okay. The thing about it is that it depends on which class you belong to. So if you're a worker class.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, all of the Cubans that came to the United States were either of the right-wing ilk that were losing out because of the revolution. They were tethered to American business interests.
Members.
So I mean, the folks that stayed were the ones that, were part of the revolution and wanted, more egalitarian government, right? The folks that left were and it's the same thing you make about the Iran-Contras and the Iran-Contras, that's the affair, about the Contras and against the Sandinistas. Like, you see this time and time again, you know what I'm saying?
Same with Iran too. The Shah supporters.
Fair, all right. The people that come here are the right wingers, and that's what they try to placate. Whatever party you're in Florida, you're placating the Cubans there, and the Cubans there are the right wingers. They're not the left wingers. Like, I don't think this is controversial, right?
No, not at all. But what AOC, hold on. What AOC does not understand or doesn't care to understand is that like you have to figure out, like, you can look at A, she has to learn a lot more, but then B, you have to kind of figure out, okay, this literacy, like for example, with Cuba, like in the American press, they spun it as like, oh, Fidel Castro is authoritarian and he outlawed private schools. No, that's not what he did. He integrated the schools by like nationalizing them and saying, hey, you private schools, so you can't have whites only private school. You have to. But the way it was spun in the American press was something stupid. And then what she was not,
and the literacy rate in Cuba is higher than, like, that's what I don't understand. People try to throw everything into this like good or bad pile, and they really miss out on so many things. And it's really, you're right, that's stupid.
Yeah, but anyways, but the thing is that she was capitulating there. She was not expanding. Like with the USSR, I'm like, I want to, like, if I were in her, I will never be in that chair, because this is exactly my answer. I would be like, so are you telling me you don't want to defeat the Nazis, send a man to space, cure illiteracy, and eradicate smallpox within 20 years? Is like she could have done that. But instead, no, she was like, I don't want to be authoritarian. Like, and it's like, and that's entirely the problem, is that you're accepting their framing, their work, and you're capitulating, and you can't.
That's exactly it.
Centimeter.
That's exactly it. They're accepting the framing. She's accepting the framing that they're spouting out, and the smarter move would be like, hold on, I have a problem with that framing. This is why. But I also find it interesting the way that they went after Bernie Sanders over Cuba.
Why? Okay, well, why the fuck didn't? Okay, hold on.
But they didn't go after Obama for saying.
Can I go on this rant for a second?
Yeah.
Okay. So you know what Bernie Sanders should have done when they asked about the Sandinistas? They're like, did you know that the Contras we talked about this last week. Okay, sorry, but beheaded babies. And then he should have been like, okay, why are you supporting beheading babies? Is like the only thing he should have been. But instead he wouldn't. He was like afraid of like doing that.
Right.
And and it's like the way Americans make the like they pretend that like they have all these like stupid things, like only like corporations care about foreign policy. Well, yeah, but Americans should. And like, so they won't talk about foreign policy and all these like, and so then the American worker will never like understand why everything's screwed up, because everything comes back. For example, if you don't understand like foreign policy, you don't understand why the WTA charges like forces every country to have a certain patent for their vaccines, and why your medicine costs $50,000 and why you need to go do a GoFundMe. But we can't do that in like 30 seconds. So like, so the entire deal was to like the only way to let the left be even marginally left is if they never spoke about foreign policy. And
you know what, you're making a valid point there. That's true, because they are always looking for that 30-second soundbite about issues that are very complex. And when somebody like Bernie Sanders tries to get into the complexity,
he didn't even try it. I mean, that hard.
No, he didn't.
This part, he could have totally talked about the Sandinistas. He should have been like,
right. But I think he has in the past and got slammed for it. So, which is why when he was running for office this time, he's like, okay, the last.
No, he didn't get slammed for it. No, if he had done it right, he would not have gotten slammed for it. He would have.
No, he did it. he did in the past, like I'm saying, in his past.
No, but the thing about it, he didn't do it the right way. Like with his current like reach, like if he had literally said, "Do you like when Chuck Todd asked him, do you use his like why did you support the Sandinistas?" He should have literally, said, "Do you support beheading babies? Here's a video clip of the Contras beheading babies."
The Contras beheading babies. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. I just think at that point in time, he was like, "Okay, I'm damned if I do it."
No, he would not have been damned if he had done that. He should have done this because no one is going to support beheading babies. The entire thing was on electability, and they were saying he was not electable because of what he did with the Sandinistas. But like, if he had literally said, "Do you support beheading babies?" that would have been turned the whole conversation. That would have been the end of the electability nonsense. And he didn't fight back because he's just not that type.
Yeah, there's that too. I think he's, he's
not Lenin. But
that would have been, if you're thinking on your feet, that would have been a solid response. I'm not, but here's the other thing. Sometimes when you're in those environments,
they asked him repeatedly. It was not about the feet. It was like there was like they asked that stupid question for 3 weeks in a row in January last year.
Was it that long? I just saw the one thing with Chuck Todd.
No. But they asked us like this was, and the electability was one of the main things. So I remember sending an entire policy brief about why he should answer it basically in a way that I did.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that the Contras were the good guys is always like kind of shocking to me, that more Americans don't understand how terrible the Contras were.
Well, no. All Americans do understand it the minute you show them like 30 seconds of them beheading babies. Or bayoneting babies, or as like they like gouge somebody's eyes out with a spoon.
No,
and
they were
video
horribly violent individuals. There was nothing good about the Contras.
Exactly. The only way they think it's good is because if it's like the hegemony. So all he needed to literally do was say what I did. And the fact that they asked this like 5 different times, like Pete Buttigieg brought that stupid thing up, and it's like you have death squads. You were inspired by a fucking Nazi painting. So he was not hitting back at the right level, and it had to do with a lot of like different people at different things. But this was not a hard thing. And I do remember sending this policy brief because the number one thing was electability, and he had to show like how it's electable. And for any of the GOP concern trolls, he should have hit back with this, and he did not. But sorry. I forgot.
No, don't apologize. I think you're right. The problem is so much. I think the other part of the conversation is so much of the American media is incapable of having nuanced conversations about these things at this
point. There's no nuance with the Contras. They beheaded babies.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying if somebody says you supported an authoritarian regime, blah, 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 in generality, you're not allowed to have a nuanced conversation about any of it, right?
No. The thing is that
the media is going to go with the fact Cuba's bad, end of story.
Well,
and when you try to bring in
Bernie Sanders could have done that because he's different. Like I will never get to that position because I'm going to just like unload like I did. And so they'll never put me there. So they work by censoring somebody like me who knows what, and the only way you're allowed to get that media attention is if you're not going to hit back. Like that's the basic thing is
I agree with you. Yeah. That's part of manufacturing consent, isn't it? Corporate media only hires a certain type of news reporter with intention, right? They wouldn't hire somebody like me because I would obviously question all of those things, or I would question being a stenographer for the CIA, for example, but they don't want that. So they're already predisposed to having a certain type of personnel working there to begin with. But it's generally the case that you cannot have a nuanced conversation about foreign policy. It's shameful.
But there's nothing nuanced because really, the more you study it, the more you realize what happens is that it's not going to, the nuance, when it's nuanced is the propaganda where they try to make it like nuance, but it's not. Like 9 out of 10 times what it is. Like, for example, there was this like stupid guy who was talking about Che Guevara's alleged racism. And I'm like, hey, look at who he was fighting. He was fighting this former Nazi called Siegfried Mueller. And Siegfried Mueller, also got people's, and then he exterminated an entire village of Black people. And Che was fighting to stop that. So what you said about what he may have said when he was 16 isn't stupid. And yeah, like twice, like this has happened to me where once you really know what you're doing, like there is no nuance. US is always on the bad side, always doing evil. Like I haven't found, like So nuance is how they do the
Right,
propaganda.
I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the way media handles these topics. They do the opposite. They're going to say America is always the good guy. We're on the side of democracy. We're, that's the propaganda that they put forth, right? Because but
the thing is that it's really easy to fight back that propaganda because it's actually 100% the opposite, and you have to be like, if America's a good guy, why did they hire former Nazis to mow down these like villagers in Congo and then exterminate 74 villages? Like that's how reality is. And what's going on is like when anyone like you can't nuance this, you just have to like unload reality there.
But you're not even given the opportunity to do that, is what I'm saying. Like any politician that's put into that parameter of that conversation is going to get railroaded with the 30-second soundbite, and they know it, which is unfortunate. But the second part of that, listen, this is important. I think you're misunderstanding my point. The second part of that is that U.S. media just doesn't allow the media in and of itself. I'm not even talking about interviewing other people. They're not willing to have any sort of nuanced discussion that diverges from the premise that America is the good guy, the freedom fighter, we're spreading democracy abroad, et cetera, et cetera. They have a very narrow window of the way they discuss foreign policies. So Americans aren't even exposed to any sort of nuanced conversation from the word jump, is what I'm saying, just to clarify.
I understand. You're right in that the media does select the debate, but the thing is that we have to figure out a way to hack that, right?
I agree. I know. And if you figure it out, let me know.
Well, it's easy, but like I said, it's a catch-22 in that. Well, I mean, somebody like
how is somebody like yourself ever going to get onto MSNBC?
We'll never get on. No,
it's not going to happen.
No,
right? But that's where the bigger audience is, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. That's how they keep it together. Is that they'll only have people like AOC together. And
if she says something outside of the parameters of what they like, they're going to railroad her. It's like ridiculous, but that's what we see time and time again. I don't know.
Well, except she has an Instagram that has over millions of followers, and she doesn't have to be railroaded.
I'm not saying she shouldn't be going on Instagram and making her case. She should be. I agree with that. That's one of the things I actually like about Bernie's track record is that he would do that, right? He always found a way. He's like, well, if I can't get my 2 cents out on the Rachel Maddow show, I'm going to turn to my YouTube, my Twitter, my Twitch. Even he was on Twitch there for a while, and try to get these messages out. So, but he's the exception, right? He's the exception to the rule on that. And I think it's why, I also think it's why a lot of the younger audiences were so drawn to him, right? More so than any other presidential candidate I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Well, yeah, because he's not choreographed. Like Martin,
he's authentic. Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, and Joe Biden is just like I'm still like not gonna like Joe Biden was barely there. Like he was very choreographed, and yeah. But what it tells you is that yeah, basically you're right. I guess they won't let you.
They won't let you. That's it. That's it. That's the tweet.
Yeah, Michigan apparently has the first human hantavirus. I don't know what that is.
Human what?
Hantavirus.
Is this some breaking news thing?
Yeah, Michigan reports its first human hantavirus case. Women contracted deadly respiratory disease while cleaning abandoned home infested with rodents.
Oh.
I don't know what it is.
Whatever that is, it sounds bad.
Recently hospitalized from hantavirus.
So that's a zootropic disease that comes from rodents, I guess?
I don't know what it's. Yes, maybe. It's a pulmonary syndrome typically passed to humans when they breathe air contaminated with virus through rodent droppings or from a rodent bite, or if people touch something that's been contaminated. And the spread has been through deer, and many of those symptoms. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Okay.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, I feel doomed. But
I think we are doomed.
Well, I don't know.
I laugh because if I don't laugh, I'm just going to spend all day crying. Yeah. We're in a very dystopian time. Here's the crazy thing. All of this could have been avoided though, right? Like we knew climate change was coming 30 years ago without equivocation. You know, in the late 90s, it was clear that this is where we were heading, and we had a very small window.
Actually, I have on Instagram, there's like an article from 1907 that tells you about climate change.
Wow, that's wild. Okay. Yeah, there were probably people talking about it earlier, but at that point, I just remember, you know, I was when I was in college, it's like the science is pretty clear right now that this is where we're headed, and folks just didn't want to hear it, you know. And some folks still don't want to hear it. We are now in the worst recorded drought in California. We had absolutely no rain this year, like literally maybe 2 days of hardly any rain. We are going to be in a very dire situation very soon. Our reservoirs are very empty, and we have a large population here. So I mean, this could be very dystopian very quickly.
Yeah,
I worry about it.
It will be. I mean, there's a big famine coming in the West very soon. Like it's already there in North Dakota.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, there is something really bad happening, but unfortunately, most of the people that's going to feel the brunt of it is poor people.
Yeah, always.
The third world.
Always.
Yeah. So I forgot what it is that I guess the first one is we were talking about capitulation, and the capitulation of the with AOC. Like I said, she capitulates on everything, and she doesn't even have the balls to like even learn about foreign policy or anything. And unfortunately, the way everything is structured, we're just screwed because, well, I don't see much hope for America. I'm sorry.
I get it. I get it. I mean, her response on Israel Palestine was pretty.
I forgot what that was again.
It was absolutely a lack of response. It was like she didn't want to give an answer to it, and then it was like she was both siding it, and then it was peace, both sides. Like it was just the most ridiculous response I've ever heard.
I vaguely remember, but I forgot. I vaguely remember, but I remember seeing the tweet, but I forgot what the response was.
It was bad. It was bad.
Okay. So
it was absolutely inexcusable as far as I'm concerned, especially from a politician that had already been having leftist Jewish folks come at her previously for asking her to learn more about things. She's had months now to do that. And so it felt to me like she was equivocating in the sense that she didn't want to anger liberal folks that still support Palestine or Israel unequivocally, like.
But there's which
I don't think you can do at this point. And then also try to equivocate to the leftist Jewish population that has been sort of riding her to change her opinion on this. So it was like she was trying to both side it to not piss off either one of these groups. But you can't do that at this point. That ship sailed, right? That tension is not going to hold. And I think she's doing herself a disservice by pretending that that's not the case. And I definitely think the Overton window has moved also on this subject. You know, in 2014, it was a lot different when Israel attacked Gaza. You basically had unilateral support for it. But now that's not the case anymore. I think folks have seen too many things. They've questioned some of the logic and some of the haspra that's been told them. So I think for her to not understand that and be a part of that is a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than a mistake. It's opportunism. Like I said, she, with Bolivia, she was like, she made some comment, but then a few days later, she was meeting with these like bleeping fascists. Like,
yeah, that was super strange. I thought I saw that too.
Like there was no reason, to actually, there was absolutely.
I think she doesn't have a lot of knowledge in this area, and she probably is getting some bad advice.
You could like look at his Facebook page and see she knows Spanish, and she knows when they use a racial slur and say that they want to burn bleeping racial slur at this indigenous woman and burn her alive is what he said in Spanish.
Yikes.
Yeah, it was the same day.
I didn't see that part.
Yeah,
I know she had met with some fascists, but I didn't see that part.
Like I went to his Facebook page. The first one was literally him doing a racial slur that I archived, and I'm like, that's yeah. There's like really no excuse. Yeah, like there is no. She was like used to saying like mildly progressive things, like right, but she doesn't have a good enough understanding, or she doesn't care to. And her like, it just like kind of like last year, I think about around February when she fired everyone and hired like people, like I knew she was like a lost cause because she's not, she's just capitulating, and she'll get worse and worse.
She's just capitulating. She needs, you know, who she needs is somebody like Warren Gunnels. Like somebody like that needs to come in and get a hold of her policy wise, because she's really floundering here. I mean, more ways than one. And, you know, here's the thing. You can't do that if you want to placate all the progressives that are getting angry with you right now in this moment, right? And those are her voters. That's her base.
I mean, sure, but it's not like, I mean, she's like already in there. Like, it's not like they're going to vote her off. So she's like relying on the non-democracy.
Yeah, that's probably true. She's probably in a safe district now at this point. I don't see anybody primarying her from the left. I don't see that happening. That's true.
Well, you need to raise, the first like filter is the fact that you have to raise money, and she can raise money better than anyone, so you can't really primary her anymore. So basically, people are like, she knows she's stuck there. Everyone knows that she's stuck there. And the only thing like that people can do is explain it, but people are comfortable enough that they don't really feel the need to question, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true for a lot of folks. But you know, I see a lot of people yelling at her on Twitter lately.
About what?
About her foreign policy positions.
But that's like the least of her problem.
Yeah, no, 100%. But I mean, if she has an ear to the ground, which she should.
I don't think she does.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even it's frustrating to me because even Bernie Sanders, I'm not saying that as even as like this should be something other than that. Wrong choice of words. Point being that Bernie Sanders gets really clearly foreign policy much better than AOC does.
He gets everything much better than she does.
Yeah, and he doesn't get everything right either. You know what I'm saying? I guess that's what I'm saying by even. He doesn't get everything right, but he gets so much more. And I think that's true across the board, really.
Oh, like, yeah.
All of the small beefs that I have with Bernie, like I have 70,000 larger beefs with every other politician, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think Bernie's able to learn and grow. I mean, there was a time when his position on Israel was very bad, right? He was unapologetically Zionist, as were a lot of folks, right? But he has definitely shifted on that. And I have no doubt that part of that was his willingness to listen to people like Dr. Jim Zogby on this issue and to learn stuff, right? And to understand and see things and realize that this is unacceptable and that the Palestinians have a right to also live without occupation. You know, they've had their land stolen from them. They've been willing to compromise time and time again. Yet we are still in a position where the Israeli army comes in and they're stealing houses. Like in 2021, it's outrageous that this is continuing.
Well, that video was so like, this person's like, oh, we're going to steal your house. Like he just like told that lady in English too.
Yeah. If it's not me, it'll be somebody else. The fact that that's the normalized flippant attitude of the settlers. And it really is. I've heard much worse. I've seen settler videos that are far more egregious than that. That guy was at least being sort of kind. I don't think he's being kind at all. He's still in her house, but I've seen them with weapons and nastiness and violence. You know, you've had situations where in Hebron, a couple years back, I think it was 2017, where a teenage Palestinian kid had gasoline poured down his throat and they lit his throat on fire. So he burned from the inside out. Yes, he burned from the inside out. He died in a horrifically painful way.
My God.
So there's a lot of fascism and a lot of really horrible stuff that goes on in the occupied West Bank that America just is absolutely not exposed to. I think if they were exposed to it, that would end the support of Israel tomorrow. So again, this is where the media, you know, is sort of out fault here. There's no excuse for this other than the fact that they're choosing to take a side here and promote a certain level of propaganda, because that's what it is, Haspara. You know, inside the state of Israel, the IDF has a censor. So if you work as a journalist, an Israeli journalist, you have to send your story to have approval before it's published. So really, that's not very democratic, is it? Anyway, there's all kinds of things here that are important part of the discussion. that no American politician wants to talk about, wants to learn about. Yet it is our actions here in the United States that uphold that. It's our money, it's our actions, it's what we do.
It's
so
everything.
There should be a level of accountability for that.
That's the entire thing, is like creating the non-democracy is, okay. This is really funny because you're going to love this. It's about incrementalism, and he's like really sarcastic about this, and he's like really makes fun of everything that the Democratic Party says.
Yeah. Okay, so
go ahead.
I'm going to read this, and then are you going to comment on it, or should I just?
Well, just read it, and you'll see it's funny. There's very little that needs to be commented, except the Democratic Party also.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is called, once again, about the Duma cabinet.
The Duma is their house, the Tsarist Duma. This is the second Duma in 1906.
That's right. That was when they tried to bring in. No, yeah, historically, that's when they tried to bring in a parliament to make the Tsar a little bit more appear to be more listening to the people, a little bit more democratic. Yeah, it was ridiculous. It was just a facade. But so he's basically commenting about the Duma cabinet. Okay.
Yeah, you'll say this is funny.
All right. We must choose. This is the argument the opportunists have always used to justify themselves, and they are using it now. Big things cannot be achieved at one stroke. We must fight for small but achievable things. How do we know whether they are achievable? Well, they are achievable if the majority of the political parties or the most influential politicians agree with them. The larger the number of politicians who agree with some tiny improvement, the easier it is to achieve it. We must not be utopian and strive after big things. We must be practical politicians. Oh my God.
No, go ahead.
We must be practical politicians. We must join in the demand for small things, and these small things will facilitate the fight for the big ones. We regard the small things as the surest stage in the struggle for big things. Holy shit, this could have been written by Hillary Clinton in 2016.
Yes, exactly. But this is like Lenin just making fun of, so the next line this is how all the reformists and opportunists argue.
This is some next level snark here. I have to hand it to Lenin here. This is funny. Okay, ready? This is how all the opportunists, all the reformists argue. Unlike the revolutionaries, it's true. This is how the right-wing social democrats argue about the Duma cabinet. The demand for a constituent assembly is a big demand. It cannot be achieved immediately. And by no means everyone is consciously in favor of this demand. But the whole state Duma, that is to say the vast majority of politicians, that is to say the whole people, is in favor of a Duma cabinet. We must choose between the existing evil. We must choose between the existing evil and a very small ratification of it, because the larger number of those who are in the general are dissatisfied with the existing evil and are in favor of this new, very small
rectification.
Actually, I said that wrong. Yeah, rectification. And by achieving the small thing, we shall facilitate our struggle for the big one.
Yep.
It's remarkable. I mean, so 2021 and they're still trying to make the same argument. This is wild, actually. I had no idea Lenin was funny.
He's hilarious. Okay.
We repeat. This is the fundamental, the typical argument of all opportunists all over the world.
All over time.
All over time, actually. To what conclusion does this argument inevitably lead? To the conclusion that we need no revolutionary program, no revolutionary party, and no revolutionary tactics. That we need reforms and nothing more. We do not need a revolutionary social democratic party. What we need is a party of democratic and socialist reforms. It is indeed not clear that there will always be people who admit that the existing state of affairs is unsatisfactory. Of course, always. It is not, that was a question actually. Indeed, it is not clear that there will always be people who admit that the existing state of affairs is unsatisfactory. That's a question. Of course it is. It is not the duty of advanced and class-conscious people always to support the smallest demands of our recidifications of an evil. This is the surest and most practical policy to pursue. And all talk about fundamental demands and so forth is merely the talk of utopians, merely revolutionary freeze mongering. Oh my God. It's like the modern guys when they say we're cosplaying, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
We must choose, and we must always choose between the existing evil and the most moderate of the schemas in vogue for this recidification. This is wild. So basically saying he's like the Democrats are saying now, well, we have a choice between the lesser evil and the more evil. Always choose the lesser evil. There's no other option.
Yep, that's exactly, and that's what he says. That's exactly how the German opportunist social democrats argued.
Yeah, right. Okay. That is exactly how the German opportunist social democrats argued. Wow, shit. Okay. They said, in effect, there is a social liberal trend which demands the repeal of the anti-socialist laws, a reduction of the working day, insurance against illness, and so on. A fairly large section of the bourgeoisie supports these demands. Do not repeal it by tactless conduct.
Repel it.
Repel it. You're right. By tactless conduct. Offer it a friendly hand, support it, and then you will be practical politicians and you will achieve small but real benefits for the working class. And the only thing that will suffer from your tactics will be the empty words about revolution. Wow. This is wild. You cannot make a revolution now in any case. Yeah, see, right? That's what they always say. You cannot make a revolution now. It's never the right time, right? One must choose between reaction and reform. Between the Bismarck policy and the social empire policy.
Okay, Bismarck policy is like the king, basically. So just reactionary crap.
Yeah, reactionary crap. That's wild. Okay. So the French ministerial socialists argued exactly like the
Bernsteinians.
Who are the Bernsteinians?
Okay, basically they're the same. Okay, Bernstein was this guy who basically argued that you'll slowly achieve a socialism through like all 50 years of reform, and that never happened. So
yeah, that 200 years still not going to happen.
Exactly.
They said, in effect, we must choose between reaction and the bourgeoisie radicals. I mean, come on, who promise a number of practical reforms. We must support these radicals, support their cabinets. Phrases about social revolution are merely the chatter of the Blanquists, the anarchists, the utopians, and so forth. Oh, good God. Antifa.
Exactly.
This is so funny. What is the main flaw in all of these opportunist arguments? It is in the fact that they substitute the bourgeoisie theory of united social progress for the socialist theory of the class struggle as the only real driving force of history. According to the theory of socialism, i.e. of Marxism, non-Marxist socialism is not worth serious discussion nowadays. All right, we can come back to that. The real driving force of history is the revolutionary class struggle. Reforms are a subsidiary product of this struggle. Subsidiary because they express unsuccessful attempts to weaken, to blunt this struggle, etc. According to the theory of bourgeoisie philosophers, the driving force of progress is the unity of all elements in society who realize the imperfections of certain of its institutions. Like, really? The first theory is materialistic. The second is idealist. The first is revolutionary. The second is reformist. The first serves as the basis for the tactics of the proletariat in modern capitalist countries. The second serves as the basis for the tactics of the bourgeoisie. A logical deduction from the second theory is the tactics of ordinary bourgeoisie progressives always and everywhere support what is better. And he's using scare quotes, what is better. Choose between reaction and the extreme right of the forces that are opposed to reaction. A logical deduction from the first theory is that the advanced class must pursue independent revolutionary tactics. We shall never reduce our task to that of supporting the slogans of the reformist bourgeoisie that are most in vogue. We pursue an independent policy and we put forward only such reforms as are undoubtedly favorable to the interests of the revolutionary struggle, that undoubtedly enhance the independence, class consciousness, and fighting efficiency of the proletariat. Only by such tactics can reforms from above, which are always half-hearted, always hypocritical, he's right there, and always conceal some bourgeoisie or police snare, be made innocuous. That's actually a very loaded statement, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. More than that, only by such tactics can real progress be achieved in the matter of important reforms. This may sound paradoxical, but its truth is confirmed by the whole history of the international social democratic movement. Reformist tactics are the least likely to secure real reforms. Yeah, I mean, some things get to the point where they're just beyond reform. I think the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is an absolute prime example of this, right? You can't reform that. It's beyond reform. Anyone still arguing for reform there is like, The most effective way to secure real reforms is to pursue the tactics of the revolutionary class struggle. Actually, reforms are won as a result of the revolutionary class struggle, as a result of its independence, mass force, and steadfastness. Reforms are always false, ambiguous, and permeated with the spirit of
Zubatovism. So Zubatov, what he did, he was a police chief, and what he did was he had these like fake unions, like they're kind of like like all these. They were not real unions; they were like fake unions to move the workers into it, and it was like to move them away from Marxists. So Zubatovism is like it's kind of like the trade unions you have in America, like the AFL-CIO kind of stuff.
All right, okay. So they are real only in proportion to the intensity of the class struggle. By merging our slogans with those of the reformist bourgeoisie, we I think there's a typo there. We weaken the cause of revolution and consequentially the cause of reform as well, because we thereby diminish the independence, fortitude, and strength of the revolutionary classes. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that's even remotely controversial. Some readers may ask, why repeat these elementary principles of international revolutionary social democracy? Our answer is because...
Golos Truda, that's like a journal written by the Mensheviks.
Okay. And many Menshevik comrades tend to forget them. So we might need some explanation there. This was like a leaflet that they would pass out? Or?
No, a Golos Truda. Okay, so the Bolsheviks had Iskra or like Pravda at Okno, which Okno means window, as their newspaper. So Lenin's the way Lenin did revolution was really easy. So the first thing he did was like he's like, we need to have an all Russian newspaper just for the proletariat, and then they figured out a way to print it abroad and smuggle it back into Russia. And
wow! So
he said that the mere act of having a newspaper, like being able to like distribute the newspaper to like every person, like
is revolutionary.
No, is it can show you a lot of infrastructure. Like it makes you build a lot of the infrastructure you need.
Oh,
it also makes you build communication networks that you need in order to get mass action. So that's how he did it. Like with the
wow.
and so now. So then in 1905 or 1904, the party split between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks, and the Mensheviks kind of wanted for capitalism to develop, as in like everyone to industrialize, and then like everyone from Russia emptying out from the villages to the towns, which we've spoken about this almost every episode. So then they had another journal called Golos Trudna, which means I forgot. I don't know what Golos means. Trudna means difficult. And so he was like, so he's explaining why the Golos Truda is wrong, and basically the thing about it is that Lenin even goes through these statistics where he charges them like 10 kopecks, and then like with that, like because you can't really do a poll, but if you know that every peasant in Russia is spending 10 kopecks to buy this newspaper, you know that like based on your distribution, you kind of have a rough idea of like how many people support your revolution idea.
Oh, yeah.
And so
that's kind of genius.
Yeah, that's what he did. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. In that case, we should read. I know exactly what to read after this. Okay. Where to begin? Let's read. Okay. Continue this, and we're going to read Where to Begin if you like. You're interested.
Yeah. 100%. I'm actually learning a lot here. This is very interesting. All right. So a Duma or cadet cabinet is just a false, ambiguous, and Zubatov reform.
Yeah, Zubatov is a police chief of Russia.
Right. Okay. That's the guy we were talking about a second ago. All right.
You know, it's kind of like saying, I don't know, like who's the chief of police in LA? I forgot his name.
The LAPD or sheriff. It's Alex Villanueva and more.
Villanueva is what. Okay, so he's.
I figured that's who you meant.
Yeah, Villanueva it's kind of like calling like these things like, oh, this is a Villeneuve tactic.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, I see what you're
literally
saying.
So like Zubachov was literally his name.
Yeah, so he's a guy that ran as a Bernie-crat, as a leftist who was going to bring all this reform to the sheriff's department, was going to abolish ICE, all of these things. Obviously, we laugh now, right? Because it's ridiculous. He hasn't done any of those things. He's like as right-wing, as fascist as the previous guy. Okay, so totally get that. I get that. What's that word I'm looking for? Example. All right. To forget the real significance of such a reform as an attempt on the part of the cadets to strike a bargain with the autocracy means substituting the liberal bourgeoisie philosophy of progress for Marxism. That's an important point, I think. Yep. By supporting such a reform, by including it among our slogans, we dim the revolutionary consciousness of the proletariat and we weaken its independence and fighting capacity. Mm-hmm. By upholding our revolutionary slogans in their entirety, we strengthen the actual struggle and thereby increase the probability of reforms and the possibility of turning them to the advantage of the revolution and not of a reaction. This is true. I agree with this. Yeah. All that is false and hypocritical in these reforms, we leave to the cadets. All that is positive value in them, we utilize for ourselves. Only by such tactics shall we be able to take advantage of the attempts of the more Russians here, Trepovs and Nakov.
Oh, okay. Those are cadet people. So just like that's like calling somebody Pelosi's and Pelosi's and can name somebody else, please. Can you name Pelosi's and Steny Hoyers.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. To trip each other up so as to throw both of these worthy acrobats into the pit. Only if we pursue such tactics will history say about us what Bismarck said about the German social democrats. If there were no social democrats, there would be no social reform. Had there not been a revolutionary proletariat, there would have been no October 17th. Had there been no December, attempts to prevent the convocation
of the Duma
would have been defeated. We shall have another December, which will determine the future progress of the revolution. So he's hitting up on revolutionary important dates there.
Okay. So what happened was that in October, we covered this last week. So in October of 1905, Bulagin, some psycho landlord, gangster czarist guy, wrote this fake constitution where they had we literally covered this last week. So what happened is that so they did this, they tried to do a fake and then everyone striked. And then they finally had the Duma finally the Tsar let them elect the Duma. But then in the December, the Black Hundreds went and started shooting everyone who
right.
run for the election. Yeah. And so then they had a second strike and then that kind of stopped that in their tracks. So basically, yeah. Basically, he's saying
interesting. God, it's just wild that this could have been written. Some of this could have been written by Bernie Sanders 2 years ago.
Yep, all of it.
It's kind of wild. Interesting stuff.
Yeah. But can you read the postscript? Because that's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, there's a postscript here. Okay, it's postscript. This article had already been written when we read the leading article in Golos Truda number 6. Our comrades are mending their ways. They now propose that before accepting their portfolios, the Duma cabinet should demand and secure the abolition of martial law in all parts of the country, the abolition of secret police, a general amnesty, and the restoration of all liberties. Very good, comrades. Ask the Central Committee to insert these terms in its resolution on the Duma cabinet. In fact, do it yourselves, and then it will read, before supporting a Duma or cadet cabinet, we must demand and secure that the Duma or cadets take the path of revolution. Before supporting the cadets, we must demand and secure that the cadets cease to be cadets.
Cadets is the Constitutional Democratic Party, and they if you remove the word constitutional, they're exactly like our Democratic Party.
All right, so basically that last line is saying before supporting the Democrats, We must demand and secure that the Democrats cease to be Democrats.
Exactly. That's why I wanted you to read that part.
No, that's really good. That's some good stuff. That's some good stuff.
Yeah, he's like...
Now we need, you know who we need to read this in his Bernie Sanders voice is, the actor that does all that funny Bernie Sanders parody, and I can't think of his name right now.
James Domain.
Thank you, James. I even know James. I'm like helping out. Yeah, how much funniness would that be if James Adamant like was reading this in his Bernie voice?
Okay, well, I have a secret wish is I want an Irishman here because Lenin spoke English with an Irish accent, and I still want...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
By intention?
No, what happened was that so he was exiled to London in 1900, and so what he did was he just like according to his wife, like they decided to save money on lessons, and English lessons from an Englishman would have cost like a lot more money, so they just went and got lessons from an Irishman, and then people didn't know this, but then in 1920. When this Irish a delegation went to Russia and they spoke to Lenin, they're like, "What? He's speaking like an Irishman." And then Lenin had an Irish accent. So I want an Irish guy here to that would be so. I okay. If you're an Irish person, please be on the show.
All right.
Yeah.
So there's one more article.
Hold on. It might be a little too long. So
okay.
But no, I mean I want you to read it, but I just want you to. Let's see. Should we read the whole thing or just part of it? This is a long. Wait, I know this is not that long. Where to begin? Okay, never mind. Let's go for it.
All right. In recent years, the question of what is to be done has confronted Russian social democrats with particular insistence. It is not a question of what path we must choose, as was the case in the late 80s and early 90s, which could be, any century.
Yeah.
But of what practical steps we must take upon the known path and how they will be taken.
Yes.
It is a question of a system and plan of practical work. Everything is practical. And it must be admitted that we have not yet solved the question of the character and the methods of struggle fundamental for a party of particular activity.
Practical activity.
It still gives rise to serious differences of opinion, which reveal a deplorable... The odds of that word being used, can we have a second there? Which reveal a deplorable ideological instability and vacillation. On the one hand, The Economist, I mean, this is could have been written in 2016 again.
Yeah, all of it. Go ahead.
I mean, we have a publication right now, The Economist.
Oh, no. Lenin, it's funny. Lenin really insults The Economist to the point that they're even bitter about it today. He calls it a rag that is the British millionaire's mouthpiece is his most famous insult, but he has constant insults for them.
I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, this publication is still around.
Yeah, today they were like, "Oh my God, Peru's going to elect
there was a time
socialist president." Look
exactly.
At the value of they have an article about the mineral values. So he's right, but it's kind of funny.
Right.
It's the same. By the way, it's the same magazine he's making fun of. But here,
I was wondering, but then I realized, it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, so the Economist, but the Economist trend he's talking about is basically people who did not want to do any political activity, but just wanted to do strikes in factories and getting better conditions purely through economic strikes. But go on.
The really sad thing is The Economist, even how flawed and horrible it is one of the few publications that even tries to discuss foreign policy that no other media discusses, which is really so unfortunate.
But they support Pinochet.
Oh, I'm not defending it. I hear what you're saying, but it's random to me that you'll find articles in there about things that are going on in small African countries, that no other
for the investors.
Discuss. Right. So anyway, it's just a sidebar. All right. So on the one hand, The Economist trend, far from being dead,
unfortunately,
is endeavoring to clip and narrow the work of political organization and agitation. Wow, they're still doing that in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
On the other, unprincipled electricism.
Electicism.
Oh, electicism, the electability he's discussing there, is again rearing its head, aping every new trend, and is incapable of distinguishing immediate demands from the main tasks and permanent needs of the movement as a whole. This trend, as we know, has ensconced itself in
Rabot Chaya Diallo, which means the workers' business. It's a Menshevik journal.
Okay. This journal's latest statement of program, a bombastic article under the bombastic title, A Historic Turn.
Listok. Okay, so he's showing which edition of the journal it's in. I actually have all of it downloaded, but gone.
All right, on. Bears out with special emphasis the characterizations we have given. We only yesterday there was a flirtation with economism. That's kind of a strange.
No,
word.
we just spoke about it. Economist is like where you just wanted to like.
He's relating it back to the actual publication. I see. Okay, gotcha. A fury over the because I was thinking, wouldn't you just say economics? But I understand what he's doing there. A fury over the resolute condemnation of
Rabot Chaya Misul, which means the worker's mind.
Bears out with special emphasis the characterization.
Hold on. Kind of, and Plekhanov. Yeah, Lenin really hates Plekhanov too. I feel like he can't skip over. I think this is the first time we came across Plekhanov. But what you need to know is Plekhanov sucks. Lenin doesn't like him, and he'll like insult him for like the next 10 years until he picks up Kautsky. So those are the two main people he insults.
All right, gotcha. So this is like if he was having a Twitter beef right now, that's who it would be with.
Yeah, Plekhanov and Karl Kautsky. Georgy Plekhanov was a Menshevik, and yeah, Lenin really hates him, is what you'll know.
Okay, all right,
a lot.
So presentation of the question of struggle against autocracy was being toned down, but today,
Liebknecht, he's the head of the German Social Democratic Party.
Okay. Today, Liebknecht's words are being quoted. If the circumstances change within 24 hours, then tactics must be changed within 24 hours. There is talk of a strong fighting organization for direct attack, for storming the autocracy, of broad revolutionary political agitation among the masses. This is in quotes, how energetic are we now, both revolutionary and political? Of ceaseless calls for street protests, of street demonstrations of pronounced political character, and so on and so forth. So he's making fun of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We might perhaps declare ourselves at
Rabot Chaya Diallo. Yeah.
Quick grasp of the program we put forward in the first issue of Iskra.
That means spark.
Okay. Calling for the formation of a strong, well-organized party whose aim is not only to win isolated concessions, but to storm the fortress of the autocracy itself. But the lack of any set point of view in these individuals can only dampen our happiness.
Rabot Chaya Diallo,
of course, mentions
Liebknecht.
Name in vain. The tactics of agitation in relation to some special question or the tactics with regard to some detail of party organization may be changed in 24 hours, but only people devoid of all principle are capable of changing in 24 hours, or for that matter, in 24 months.
Yep.
Their view on the necessity in general, constantly and absolutely of an organization of struggle and of political agitation among the masses. It is ridiculous to plead different circumstances in a change of periods. The building of a fighting organization and the conduct of political agitation are essential under any drab, peaceful circumstance. In any period, no matter how marked by the declining explosion and outbursts.
Hold on, declining revolution, marked by a declining revolutionary spirit.
I skipped a line here. Didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
No
Whoopsie. Hang on. It all seemed to be going together just fine.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous to plead different circumstances and a change of periods. The building of a fighting organization and conduct of political agitation are essential under any drab, peaceful circumstances in any period, no matter how marked by a declining revolutionary spirit.
Yep.
Moreover, it is precisely in such periods and under such circumstances that work of this kind be particularly necessary, since it is too late to form the organization in times of explosion and outbursts. The party must be in a state of readiness to launch activity at a moment's notice. Change the tactics within 24 hours, but in order to change the tactics, it is first necessary to have tactics. You think? Without a strong organization skilled in waging political struggle under all circumstances and at all times, there can be no question of what systemic plan of action, illumined by firm principles and steadfastly carried out, which alone is worthy of the name of tactics. Let us indeed consider the matter. We are now being told that the historic moment has presented our party with a completely new question. The question of terror. The question of terror?
No, the question, yeah, it's the question of terror. Go ahead.
We need to discover what this is. Yeah. Yesterday, the completely new question was political organization and agitation. Today it is terror. What is this, the George Bush years?
Yeah. Okay. The Tsar would have these people called the Black Hundreds and the Cossacks who would just go kill people who misbehaved in factories. So that was the terror.
Wow. All right. So they're using the same sort of argument here about terror. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It is strange to hear people who have so grossly forgotten their principles holding forth on a radical change in tactics. Interesting. Okay. So next paragraph. Let's see. Fortunately, is an error. The question of terror is not a new question at all. Apparently it's not. It will suffice to recall briefly the established view of Russian social democracy on the subject. I mean, look, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist.
No. By terror, they mean the ones that kind of like what the LAPD does with protesters. That's what they mean.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The way. Okay, so they're saying that the worker, the Rabotche Diallo, wants to take the soft route because oh my God, my Russian teacher. Okay. And so now I'm it's kind of funny. You can even see this in the transliteration because it's diallo. There's an E in the ya, and I'm nya versus mnya. And I'm okay, I'm actually getting nervous. I'm rabochea diallo. Even in the English. I know. And I'm okay, I'm literally getting nervous about this. When I'm reading the English, I've never gotten nervous with an English transliteration of a Russian word before, but I'm oh my God, tomorrow I'm going to have to because tomorrow we're going to be talking about our daily schedules and, diallo is business. So it's rabochi diallo. Anyways, so yeah.
It sounds good to me, girl.
No. Yeah, but see, there's a Russian letter that looks like this, and that's yeah. And then there's a Russian letter that looks like an E, which is yeah. So you have to be careful not to mix those up because
the N and the Nye in Spanish.
No. It's every letter is this way. So if you mix it up, you have to repeat.
Really, every letter is so. Russian's pretty complicated. It sounds like.
Well, there's there's a th and a ta. And a duh and a duh. So there's a hard soft version of every letter. So you can't mix it up because you have to do it over and over and over and over.
Plus, they probably have different meanings for something simply pronounced wrong. Yeah, I got you.
No, I think this is just like having a weird teacher who's old school. But yeah, so I was I don't know why. I'm getting nervous about pronouncing rabochia diallo.
You're live.
Hey everyone. It looks like our video stopped. Did we finish reading this, or do I have to read it again?
I think we probably had a few more minutes left into the piece itself.
Okay, let me just read it again then. Where should we start from?
I would go from, I'm not exactly sure where it ended, but I would definitely go from about, I don't know.
Okay. But let's start over.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna actually read my translated version. The one that I did. Snapchat, right? Let me figure this out. Okay. Yeah, because he's much funnier than he's much funnier when in his original Russian is yeah, it's Chiv. I'm probably butchering it. Okay, I'm not gonna do this anymore. Chivolnachat, like where to begin. And give me just 1 second to find it. But I've translated, use the one from Lenin.substack.com because that's the one where we have the funnier translation because he's like sarcastic and mean and rude and just Lenin. Okay, found it. I love him. Okay, where is it? Okay. So let's start over. Okay. In recent years, the question of what is to be done has confronted Russian social democrats with particular insistence. It is not a question of what path we must choose, as it was in the case in the late 80s and early 90s, but of what practical steps we must take upon the known path and how they shall be taken. It is a question of system and a plan of practical work, and it must be admitted that we have not yet solved this question of the character and the methods of struggle, fundamental for a party of practical activity, that it gives rise to the serious differences of opinion which reveal a deplorable ideological instability and vacillation. On the one hand, the economist trend, far from being dead, is endeavoring to clip and narrow the work of a political organization and agitation. On the other hand, unprincipled eclecticism is rearing its head, aping every new trend, and is incapable of distinguishing immediate demands from the main tasks and permanent needs of a movement as a whole. This trend, as we know, has its constant self in Rabotria Diallo. Jenna, is there any way you can put a picture of like how pretentious Rabotria Diallo is?
Yeah, I'll just.
Okay.
What do you? Oh, the picture that's on the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I can throw that up. It'll take a minute though, so go ahead and read.
I'm starting from this top. Okay, so this journal's latest statement of program, a bombastic article under the bombastic title "A Historic Turn," bears out with special emphasis the characterization we have given. Only yesterday, there was a okay, I'm going to actually read what Lenin actually said. It's really funny. Okay. Only yesterday, we were flirting with economism. We were indignant at the decisive condemnation of Rabochaya Miso and softened Plekhanov's statement on the struggle against the autocracy. And today, we're already talking about a strong fighting organization for a direct attack and for an assault on the autocracy and a broad revolutionary political, that's how vigorous both revolutionary and political agitation in the masses, and about a tireless call for street protest and about the organization of street demonstrations of a sharply political nature, etc., etc., etc. To quote Liebknecht's words, if the circumstances change in 24 hours, then the tactics must also change in 24 hours. We might perhaps declare ourselves happy at Rabochaya Diallo's quick grasp of the program we put forward in the first issue of Iskra, calling for a formation of a well-organized party whose aim is not only to win isolated concessions, but to storm the fortress of autocracy itself. But the lack of any set viewpoints of these individuals can only dampen our happiness. Rabochaya Diallo, of course, mentions Liebknecht's name in vain. The tactics of agitation in relation to some special question or tactics with regard to some detail of party organization may be changed within 24 hours. But only people devoid of all principle are capable of changing in 24 hours, or for that matter, in 24 months, their view on the necessity in the general and constantly and absolutely of an organized struggle and of political agitation amongst the masses. It is ridiculous to plead different circumstances and the change of periods. The building of a fighting organization and the conduct of political agitation are essential under any drab, peaceful circumstances in any period, no matter how marked by a declining revolutionary spirit. Moreover, it is precisely in such periods and under such circumstances that work of this kind is particularly necessary. Since it is too late to form the organization in times of explosions and outbursts, the party must be in a state of readiness to launch activity at a moment's notice. Change the tactics within 24 hours. But in order to change the tactics, it is first necessary to have tactics. Without a strong organization skilled in waging political struggle under all circumstances and at all times, there can be no question of a systematic plan of action. The plan of action, illumined by firm principles and steadfastly carried out, is alone worthy. Is it not strange to hear people who have grossly forgotten their principles holding forth a radical change in tactics? Fortunately, Rabotchia Diallo is in error. The question of terror is not a new question at all. It will suffice to recall briefly the established views of Russian social democracy on the subject. In principle, we have never rejected and cannot reject terror. Terror is one of the forms of military action that may be perfectly suitable and even essential at a definite juncture in the battle, given the definite state of troops and the existence of definite conditions. But the important point is that terror at the present time is by no means suggested as an operation for the army in the field. An operation in the army in the field is an operation closely connected with and integrated into the entire system of struggle. Instead, it is an independent form of occasional attack unrelated to any army, without a central body and with the weakness of local revolutionary organizations. This, in fact, is all that terror can be. We therefore declare emphatically that under the present conditions, such a means of struggle is inopportune and unsuitable. It diverts the most active fighters from the real task, the task which is most important from the standpoint of the interests of the movement as whole, and that it disorganizes the forces not of the government but of the revolution. We need to recall the recent events. With our own eyes, we saw the mass of workers, common peoples of the towns, press forward in the struggle, while the revolutionaries lacked a staff of leaders and organizers. That's because the Tsar imprisoned all of them. Lenin was in Siberia now. Okay. Under such conditions, is there not the danger that as the most energetic revolutionaries go over to terror, the fighting contingents in whom alone it is possible to place serious reliance will be weakened? Is there not the danger of rupturing the contact between the revolutionary organizing and the disunited masses of the discontent, the protesting and the disposed to struggle, who are weak precisely because they are disunited? Yet it is this contact that is the sole guarantee of our success. Far be it from us to deny the significance of heroic individual blows. But it is our duty to sound a vigorous warning against becoming infatuated with terror, against taking it to be the chief and basic means of struggle, as so many people strongly inclined to do at present time. Terror can never be a regular military operation. At best, it can only serve as one of the methods employed in a decisive assault. But can we issue the call for such a decisive assault at a present time? Rabotchaya Diallo apparently thinks we can. At any rate, it exclaims, form assault columns. But this, again, is more zeal than reason. The main body of our military forces consists of volunteers and insurgents. We possess only a few small units of regular troops, and they are not even mobilized. They are not connected with one another. nor have they been trained to form any columns of any sort, let alone assault columns. In view of all this, it must be clear to anyone who is capable of appreciating the general condition of our struggle, and who is mindful of them at every turn in the historic course of events, that at the present moment that our slogan cannot be to the assault, but it has to be lay siege to the enemy fortress. In other words, the immediate task of our party is not to summon all available forces for the attack right now, but to call for a formation of a revolutionary organization capable of uniting all forces and guiding the movement in actual practice and not in name alone. That means an organization ready at any time to support every protest, every outbreak, and use it to build up and consolidate the fighting forces suitable for the decisive struggle. The lesson of the February and March events have been so impressive that no disagreement in principle with this conclusion is now likely to be encountered. What we need at the present time, however, is not a solution to the problem in principle, but a practical solution. We should not only be clear on the nature of an organization that is needed in its precise purpose, but we must elaborate a definitive plan for an organization so that its formation may be undertaken from all aspects. In view of the pressing importance of the question, we, on our part, take the liberty of submitting to the comrades a skeleton plan to be developed greater in detail in a pamphlet now ready for print. In our opinion, the starting point of our activities, the first step towards creating the desired organization, or let us say, the main thread, which, if followed, would enable us to steadily develop, deepen, and extend that organization, should be founding of an all-Russia political newspaper. Let me repeat this again. In our opinion, the starting point of our activities, the first step towards creating the desired organization, or let us say the main thread, which, if followed, would enable us to steadily develop and deepen and extend that organization, should be founding of an all-Russia political newspaper. A newspaper is what we most of all need. Without it, we cannot conduct systemic all-around propaganda and agitation. Consistent in principle, which is the chief and permanent task of social democracy in general, and in particular, the pressing task of the moment. When interest in politics and in question of socialism has been aroused amongst the broadest strata of the population, never has the need been felt so acutely as today for reinforcing dispersed agitation in the form of individual action, local leaflets, pamphlets, by means of a generalized and systematic agitation that can only be conducted with the aid of the periodical press. It may be said without exaggeration that the frequency and regularity in which a newspaper is printed and distributed can serve as a precise criteria of how well this cardinal and most essential sector of our militant activities is built up. Furthermore, our newspaper must be all Russian, as in all over the country Russia. If we fail to combine our efforts to influence the people and the government by means of the printed word, it will be utopian to think of combining other means more complex, more difficult, and also more decisive for exerting influence. Our movement suffers in the first place, ideologically as well as practical organizational respects, from its state of fragmentation and almost complete immersion of the overwhelming majority of the social democrats in local work, which narrows their outlook, the scope of their activities, and their skill in the maintenance of secrecy and their preparedness. It is precisely in this state of fragmentation that one must look at the deepest roots of instability and the waverings noted above. The first step towards eliminating this shortcoming, towards transforming diverse local movements into a single all-Russian movement, must be founding of an all-Russian newspaper. Lastly, what we need is a definitely political newspaper. Without a political organ, a political movement deserving that name is inconceivable in the Europe of today. Without such a newspaper, we cannot possibly fulfill our task, that of concentrating all the elements of political discontent and protest and of vitalizing and thereby the revolutionary movement of the proletariat. We have taken the first step, We have aroused in the working class a passion for the economic factory exposures. We must now take the next step, that of arousing in every section of the population that is at all politically conscious a passion for political exposure. We must not be discouraged by the fact that the voice of the political exposure is so feeble and timid and infrequent. This is not because of a wholesale submission to police despotism, but because those who are able and ready to make exposures have no tribune from which to speak, no eager and encouraging audience. They do not see anywhere among the people that the force which would be worth directing at their complaint against the omnipotent Russian government. But today, all this is rapidly changing. There is such a force. It is the revolutionary proletariat, which has demonstrated its readiness not only to listen and support the summons to political struggle, but to boldly engage in battle. We are now in a position to provide a tribune for the nationwide exposure of the Tsarist government, and it is our duty to do so. That tribune must be a social democratic newspaper. The Russian working class, as a distinct from other classes and strata of Russian society, displays a constant interest in political knowledge and manifests a constant extensive demand, not only in the political and intensive unrest for illegal literature. When such a mass demand is evident, when the training of experienced revolutionary leaders has already begun, when the concentration of the working class makes it virtual master in the working class districts of the big cities and the factory settlements in the communities, it is quite feasible for the proletariat to found a political newspaper. Through the proletariat, the newspaper will reach the urban petty bourgeoisie, the rural handicraftsmen, the peasants, and thereby becoming a real political newspaper. The role of the newspaper, however, is not only limited solely to the dissemination of ideas, to political education, and to the enlistment of political allies. A newspaper is not only a collective propagandist, a collective agitator, but it is also a collective organizer. Highlight this and tweet this out to your friends. A newspaper is not only a collective propagandist and a collective agitator, but it is also a collective organizer. In this last respect, it may be likened to a scaffolding of a building under construction, which marks the contours of the structures that facilitates communication between builders, enabling them to distribute the work and view the common results achieved by their organized labor. With the aid of the newspaper, and through it a permanent organization that will naturally take shape, that will engage not only in local activities, but in general work, and will train its members to follow political events carefully, appraise their significance and their effect on the various strata of population, and develop an effective means for the Revolutionary Party to influence these events. The mere task of regularly supplying a newspaper with copy and of promoting regular distribution will necessitate a network of local agents of the United Party, who will maintain constant contact with one another, know the general state of affairs, get accustomed to performing regularly their detailed function in the all-Russian work, and test their strength in the organization of various revolutionary actions. This network of agents will form the skeleton of precisely the kind of organization we need, one that is sufficiently large to embrace the whole country, sufficiently broad and many-sided to effect a strict, detailed division of labor, sufficiently well-tempered to be able to conduct steadily its own work under any circumstances and sudden turns, and in the face of all contingencies, sufficiently flexible to be able, on the one hand, to avoid an open battle against an overwhelming enemy when the enemy has concentrated all its forces at one spot, and yet on the other to take advantage of his unwieldiness and to attack him when he and where he expects it the least. Today we are faced with the relatively easy task of supporting student demonstrations in the streets of big cities. Tomorrow, we may perhaps have the more difficult task of supporting, for example, the unemployed movement in some particular area. The day after, to be at our post in order to play a revolutionary part in a peasant uprising. Today, we must take advantage of the tense political situation arising out of the government's campaign against the Zemstvo. I'll get to it later. tomorrow we may have to support popular indignation against some czarist Bashi Bazook on a rampage and help by the means of boycott, indictment, demonstration to make things so hot for him as to force him into open retreat. Such a degree of combat readiness can only be developed through the constant activity of regular troops. If we join forces to produce a common newspaper, this will work to train and bring into the foreground not only the most skillful propagandists, but the most capable organizers, the most talented political party leaders capable at the right moment of releasing the slogan for the decisive struggle and taking the lead in that struggle. In conclusion, a few words to avoid possible misunderstanding. We have spoken continuously of systematic planned preparation, yet it is by no means our intentions to imply that the autocracy can be overthrown only by regular siege or organized assault. Such a view would be absurd and doctrinaire. On the contrary, it is quite possible and historically much more probable that the autocracy will collapse under the impact of one of the spontaneous bursts or unforeseen political complications which constantly threaten it from all sides. But no political party that wishes to avoid adventurous gambles can base its activity on the anticipation of such outbursts and complications. We must go on our own way, and we must steadfastly carry out our regular work. The less our reliance on the unexpected, the less of a chance of our being caught unawares by any historic turns. So this is where he gets the idea for Iskra. Let's do some comments. It might be fun.
All right. I had the I did add in, and it was up for a second. If you want to discuss the picture of the article, because you said to throw that up, but I haven't.
Yeah. Well, it's pretentious. I'll get it. Okay.
Yeah. So okay. So let me add in one of the first comment. Give me 1 second. Huge add source. I know I can't add them while you're on.
Oh, no worries. This is really funny.
That wasn't what I wanted.
Okay, let's do the first comment. I forgot what it was, but
okay.
Let me read it out loud.
Okay, hold on.
Give me 1 second. Am I here?
Yeah, you're still on. You're still on. All right. So this is this is the first comment that you sent to me.
Let's see.
And it says it's kind of up, kind of small, but let me make it bigger. It says it's from Ghani Abdul. Lesser evilism basically humanizes evil and makes it the new normal.
He's absolutely right. That's what we call the ratchet effect. And you don't have to settle for lesser evilism. So the thing is that what people say is when they mean practical with the existing procedures and rules. This is a new solution. So think of it as a new problem that has never been solved. Like you're like an inventor inventing some crap. And then you get creative. So anyone who says that, oh, you have to vote for Democrats or whatever bullshit, I mean, there may be if you join, if there is a revolutionary organization, blah, 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 you might have a tactic of voting for Democrats and some sort of alliance later on, but that's a different thing. That's decided by everyone with the revolutionary organization. So yeah, lesser evilism is for the uncreative and the lazy and people who have constitutional illusions. So the bourgeoisie will never create a system that will let you overthrow them using their own rules. That's just not going to happen. So you're going to have to get creative and hack the system. Okay, what's the second comment?
All right, the second comment that you added, it was kind of, this was a little conversation. And let's see, I just got to make it a little bit bigger. I can see it. Okay. So I don't know if you wanted that. Socialism doesn't work at the top. It was just a laugh.
Sure, why not?
And then John Watson says, we all need a Stalin in our lives. And
yes.
It's funny because it's Toast said, added Ghani Abdul, the same sad old and uneducated one-liners. And then Jenny Lin said, we could definitely use a man of steel right now.
Yep, we all need a man of steel. Yeah, I know. It's sad. Well, one of you guys are going to have to step up to the plate. Maybe Johnny can be the new man of steel, right?
one of you's got to be.
Yeah, one of you has to be the new man of steel. Go for it. I have faith in you.
All right, so then you grabbed one more comment, and this was on Bismarck. And this is Jenny Lin again. And let me just make it bigger so everybody can see it. We don't even get Bismarck policies these days.
Sadly, she's 100% right. Sometimes when I look at Tsarist Russia, I'm like, oh my God, there's a one where Lenin does this ruble per vote analysis somewhere along the line. And then if you compare with the American Senate, you're like, we actually have a less democratic system than Tsarist Russia. So yeah, we don't even get the Bismarck. So the Bismarckian policy was they had social insurance, they had life insurance, social health care, public trains, and something else. Yeah, people in an actual monarchy in Bismarck's unified Germany probably had more rights as workers than we do here in the land of the free. So, yeah.
Yeah, so those were the comments that you pulled out. I'm not seeing any other questions.
Okay, do we have any? Okay, let's see. Somebody said destroyed the libs. Oh yeah. Noam Chomsky is the absolute worst. He has the somebody says Noam Chomsky is always lefts aren't evil, and he rejects Lenin, and he allegedly claims he doesn't understand dialectical materialism, which he may not, or he may be willfully blind. But yeah, Jenny Lin again said that Bismarck policy is considered extremely left in the U.S. Yes, it is, sadly, very, and the thing is that if you go from my experience with the Bernie camp is that if you go one-on-one upon people, they'll agree to it, but that again, as Lenin said, everyone's really disunited, and there's no understanding of how many members there are, how many whatever, and what you get is a whole bunch of people who in theory may agree but then are disunited, and then there's no class consciousness, so they don't understand how the news is filtered. So if New York Times, and it's kind of funny, right on TikTok today, I was somebody was like, oh, does socialism work in Venezuela? I was like, yep, it does, just not for the oil companies. They don't understand, and the information is right there. If you go to the World Bank's website, they have all the life statistics of how life is, and yet just because New York Times screams out hysterical editorials, people just don't seem to people believe that. Oh, the favorite for me was on TikTok where this person, I don't know if you guys remember, a few years ago there was this guy named Otto Warmbier who went into coma in North Korea, and then they shipped him back into the U.S. So if you look at what the coroner who did his examination, his parents wouldn't let you do an autopsy, was that he had no broken bones. His skin was in really good shape. It was actually better than what it would be in if he was in a U.S. hospital, so he didn't have any bed sores for being in a coma. His teeth were in perfect condition. But then, just because there are 10,000 headlines that scream out, most Americans think that he was, had his teeth pulled out and was tortured and all sorts of dumb stuff. Everywhere. It's my favorite is the it's everyone's, they're banking on everyone not to read carefully, and because the truth is right there, in paragraph 2, and most people just stop at the headlines. I mean, so it's no, he was not tortured to death. The coroner literally said that there was no sign of torture. The bones did not look like they were ever broken. There was no sign of torture. I can put a link to the coroner's video, and you can watch what she said. She literally said that there was no torture. I mean, this is exactly what or maybe she's being. Wait, are you joking? I don't know. I can't tell anymore. But yeah, that's the really horrible thing, is that so many people are so careless, stupid. I don't know. They just don't know how to read things. And with TYT, I'll go back. Like, I remember. No, Pam Pam asked, "Is that why American?" Okay, we can't visit the DPRK anymore. I don't know. I'll have to double check. I believe Trump had some dumb executive order, but we'll have to double check on that. I think you can, but you have to go through China or something, or it's weird. But we'll figure that out. Yeah, it's just like really basic stuff. I mean, well, TYT buys into every single thing. Like, yesterday I found this clip where Cenk literally said the truth. Like, in fact, their what do you call it? What do you call, like, the little thumbnail image showed this swastika with the word Azov on it. And it's like, okay, so then Cenk literally said something like, the Russian government said that the Azov battalion is Nazis, but then, and literally their thumbnail shows the swastika, like they're not hiding that fact. But then Cenk was like, oh, that must be Russian propaganda. And you're like, are you that stupid? You literally like have the truth right in front of your eyes, you moron. So the same thing with the Uyghur stuff. The truth is right there. Like, if you read the report, what Adrian Zenz classifies as genocide is the fact that the birth rate fell. But then he claims that there were like 7 IUDs per cap, as in like each woman had 7 IUDs each year, which is ridiculous, or each day, I don't know. It's something ridiculous. And then you're like, oh, so he's like, so there's no genocide. They just have birth control now in an area that they didn't. So if they went to, like, if you check India, Bihar, 1995, the same exact stats happened because the same thing. Before, these women did not have IUDs. Now they do. Adrian Bezens also thinks IUDs are abortion because IUDs are like, it's like a copper key that they like kind of stick up your uterus. And then what it does is that it prevents the a fertilized egg from implanting. So he calls that an abortion. And because he's a psychotic Christian, he thinks abortion is murder, and therefore an IUD is genocide. That's literally his logic. But TYT, majority of everyone except for Ben Norton and Dan Cohen, Jacob, oh my God, all of them like screwed you over.
I'll tell you something, Asha, that like the doctors here kept pushing IUDs on me, with me being sick and stuff, and instead of taking care of my woman parts, they kept saying, you need to get an IUD. So, I mean, like, there's pressure even in the United States for women, to get IUDs for birth control, too.
Actually, it's the opposite in China. So let me explain. In a very conservative family, depending, like in India, I can at least tell you this, and my guess is it might be similar in China. Like, a woman is actually, like, kind of pressurized to have birth control, like give birth until she has a baby boy. It has to do with dowry, like all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So often, like, there's so much societal pressure that, like, having something as discreet as an IUD and like lying to your mother-in-law about, oh, I can't get pregnant, is a relief for a lot of these women. And of course, that would also make sense of why they would like lie if Adrian Zen says, well, oh, were you forced in front of, let's say he has in front of her mother-in-law. She might say, yeah, totally, because of the weird family pressures.
Yeah.
And so people just don't understand. There are so many cultural, social pressures, and each culture has its own unique one. Some cultures, we don't know. There are so that like Americans can't even process it in their head.
Yeah.
And so like you just knowing that there may be a cultural pressure that's going back for centuries that is outside of the arm of the law might explain a lot of things, but you have to then dive deep into the culture and really understand it and spend a lot of time and maybe even learn new languages for you to understand what that cultural process is, because it's not easily accessible to Westerners, because Westerners are just colonizers. I mean, so there is so much that you don't understand, and it's like, it's ridiculous. And
I looked up also the tourism in North Korea, like for us to like individuals from the U.S. Well, right now it's shut down due to COVID, but normally you can't use a U.S. passport unless you get a special validation from the Department of State.
Okay, so get another passport then.
Yeah.
Well, and not every one of you can get another passport, but a lot of you may, if you're parents or grandparents, depending on some countries offer dual citizenship, and you may be able to do it.
But that definitely, that's on our side. That's not on their side.
No, that's not on their side. Yeah, and like one thing is that what people don't understand is that they don't have to let you into their country. Like, and there's a lot of Western entitlement. Like, so, like the U.S. government's like, oh, you have to let us send journalists without being monitored. Well, the U.S. has basically sent CIA agents and bombed crap. So yeah, the country does not have to. And so a lot of like Western entitlement, like it's confused as authoritarian, as in like, yes, they might tell you, how they may behave towards you, the American, may be different than how they behave towards the population. There are so many questions. And the best thing is, until you know for sure, you don't have to have an opinion. You can just be like, oh, it's an unknown. Let me see if there's a way to validate. So anytime you have a new fact or new information, you have to see, is there a way to validate this? If it's like something that cannot be fact checked, just throw it away, because it doesn't matter. If it can be validated, figure out how to validate it, and then go validate it. And if it's not but if there's a method for you to validate it, but you can't currently do it, well, put it up on the internet or something and have somebody else validate it for you. So there are so many things. And it reminds me of the movie, oh no, not the movie, the book, I Am Legend, where he finally realizes that he is the monster that haunts people's dreams. And yeah, so unfortunately, Americans just are not, they can't even think straight to the point where they can even figure out, like, can this fact be validated? So the first thing, like, for example, let's say you hear that Kim Jong-un executed somebody. Well, obviously, if they show up a month later having dinner with Putin, he did not execute them. So you have to kind of look to see what happens after. Like, you have to have object permanence. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, Western journalists are the absolute worst people on earth. No, American journalists are especially worst. Like, all of them are just terrible. They all suck.
Yeah. I want to mention one thing before you sign off is because it cut Tina off. So if you guys are all interested in getting in touch with Tina, she's at Tina Desiree Berg, and her podcast is District 34.
Exactly,
and we'll put it can be found everywhere. Yeah. So we'll put links in the thing. I feel, I don't know why that just decided to stop in the middle of her talking.
It's fine. Technology shit happens. We'll put the entire thing up later too as a separate upload.
Yeah.
So this week we have some good things. Like we have an extended interview with Stanislav Tomas and historically, and then we have this other Lithuanian politician who got, like, they tried to put him in a mental hospital, so we're working on that. We need to do a voiceover because he spoke in Russian. So we have that coming up for historically. I guess we're doing a Monday night stream tomorrow. We'll have Oliver Vargas on telling us about Peru and the elections there. What else? Oh yeah, check out, I have an article about Bolivia coming out on historically. And please become a paid subscriber to it. So just go to historically.substack.com/subscribe. It's just $5 a month. Oh, we also have a merch store. So, and we're getting more stuff out. We're going to get t-shirts and stuff like that. So help us out with that too. And yes, do all this, look at all the screencasts and please help us out. And I forgot what else. Somebody said a Marxist-Leninist won the elections in Peru. I don't know if he's Marxist-Leninist, but he's Pedro Castillo, and he's promising a dictatorship of the proletariat. He wants to have a new constitution. He wants us to restart and do a new constitution. And the thing is that they're doing the same exact tactics they did with Evo Morales in Bolivia. So yeah, it's horrible. Expect race wars, death squads, murders. genocide, slavery, all sorts of terror. Ghani Abdul, yeah, why don't you tweet the contact out, and I'll totally have him on. Prabhat Patnaik. Okay, I will totally do that. Jenny Lynn said Pedro Castillo calls himself an ML, so then he is probably one. And hopefully he will, well, wish him live long and prosper, because the alternative is like, I don't want to think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, join us tomorrow for the Monday night stream with Ali Vargas and maybe other people. And next week we'll be back, and I will try to do, like, I will try to figure out a way to make it so that even the most arrogant Americans can understand why they need to learn Lenin. Like right now, I'm just at a point where I'm gonna say just ignore everyone who does not read Lenin for now. I know it sounds culty, but I don't care. Well, actually, it's not about. Okay, tomorrow. Did we do 7 or 7:30 last week? I can't remember.
You did 7.
Okay, we'll do 7 tomorrow then. Yeah, and please share this stream with your friends. Tweet at them, text them, say you have to do it. And if they're a shit lib, like, especially do it. Babysit them, bring them alcohol, get them drunk, stoned, or whatever you need. Just make sure that they are reading Lenin.
Yes.
And with that, I guess I'll sign off. Oh, and follow us on TikTok too. And I have some fun videos. Like today, some idiot tried to, I don't know why, but conservatives like twice have cited fiction books. And I'm like, yeah, you can't prove that gulags had starvation with books of fiction, especially if the books of fiction involve talking animals, you moron. So yeah, so we will be back, and I don't know, let us know how we can be a better community for you.